Thank you. Good morning. I apologize for the hair remark there. But he starts right out about Iowa State, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. And I heard, I think, 4 people clap. And that's usually a better turnout than I see among the clones. But how many Iowa State fans do we have in here? Okay, all right. How many Notre Dame fans? Okay. Well, for you two, I'll speak slower today, just so you can absorb everything I'm going to lay on you. But good morning, 7 ladies and gentlemen. I think I counted 7 females. Where would we be without our wives and our mothers and our grandmothers in putting on an event like this? Sisters, I'm still working on that one, but I have 3 lovely sisters. And family is what we have here today. I'm going to start with a quote, and I'm going to end with a quote over the next 20, 30 minutes. You'll be the judge of how long I'm up here. And after hearing Tim's incredible testimony this morning, I mean, how do you follow that inspirational, spiritual sermon with something that is related to our Lord and Savior? But Tim Jameson was spectacular. By the way, I love your Irish whiskey, Tim, and just so you know, it's spectacular. Not that I'm a heavy drinker, but I special occasions I get the Jamesons out. But I thought of this, and unfortunately I had it in my bag because I want to be accurate with it, but I thought of this when Tim was referring to the devil more than once, and he is around every corner. But we go back a few centuries, and the quote is, God made a promise to our forefathers, you will be my people, and I will be your God. Well, that hasn't changed. He is still our God. We are his people. So no matter what the negatives or the U-turns or the cliffs out there that we might fall off every now and then, God is still our God. That's what I hang on to almost every day. Well, every day for sure. My feet hit the floor in the morning, and I'm an early morning person. I love early. I'm an old early morning radio guy. And so 5:30, I think that's the best time of the day. It's quiet. Put the coffee on, go out and sit on the deck and just reflect at the beautiful sunrise or the fact that God has given us another day to live and to breathe and to honor him. And my career is because of God. All of our careers are because of God. So that's kind of where I'm going to center today. By the way, not one person who approached this microphone today said this. And we all have that lector in our parish that has a deep, resonating voice. And they cannot figure out why they're calling to be the next Dick Enberg or Al Michaels or Jim Nance has not happened. And they come out before every Sunday or Saturday night Mass. I always sit 4 rows from the front. I belong to the cathedral and St. Patrick's in Dubuque. I like to be down front to hear the eloquent Bishop Johnson when he was in Dubuque. And that lector comes out and he goes, he gets right on top of them. Could you please make sure your cell phone is on mute? And then he looks at me and I go, yeah, I'm still asking for mercy for my sins, and he wants an endorsement, but so make sure your cell phones are on mute. Bishop Johnson, I hope you folks understand what a real treasure and special human being you have here in Des Moines, in the Diocese of Des Moines, and I think he told me there's 80 parishes in the diocese. I knew him when he was a nobody, okay? I knew him, I first met him, he was an associate pastor at, was it Resurrection? Resurrection. And then he goes to Loras College, a director of vocations and student services, and brilliant. You know, I'd sneak over to Christ the King Chapel on campus and listen to his incredible sermons, as you heard this morning. And then I find out he's from Ames. And I'm thinking, how in the hell can a good-looking guy devoting his life to Jesus Christ our Savior come from Ames? And he's a Cyclone. And then I find out that Matt Campbell was here 2 years ago. And I'm thinking, I mean, I know we're in central Iowa, and I know that Des Moines has got a lot of Cyclone fans, but it is the Hawkeye State. So I was, when Joe asked me to come here today, I jumped at the opportunity just to be able to balance it out a little bit. So I appreciate that very much. It's great to be here. And I didn't know if we were still in the mask world here, but I brought my mask. Just in case they would insist that I wear a mask. But now it's a great fellowship today, and I'm honored to be here. I was kidding about Iowa State and Notre Dame before. By the way, I think this state is big enough to support two great universities, not to mention you and I, and of course Drake, the Bulldogs, right here in Des Moines. I never come to Des Moines without thinking about Jim Zabel, though. Z, for those of you old enough to remember Zabel, before I got the job, I remember there was a story in the Des Moines Register. Who's this part-time banker from eastern Iowa who thinks he can come in and replace the great Jim Zabel and Bob Brooks and Ron Gonder and Frosty? I probably should leave Frosty out of that equation, but Iowa had 6, 7, 8 stations that covered both home and away games. And Bob Bowlesby, who was the athletic director, ultimately hired me. He's looking at the numbers. Learfield came in and offered Iowa $1.2 million for the rights fees in 1995. Actually, prior to that, and Bob told me they were netting, the university was netting about $300,000 a year from all these radio stations. Well, how often can you stare down an extra $700,000 or $800,000 a year? So Iowa was one of the last great holdouts of exclusivity, where you have one flagship, or two flagships in this case, WHO and WMT, that carry all the home and away voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes. So that's how that all got started. I was doing Northwestern in Chicago, and I was working for the Bears. They were a little bit better then than they are now, and loving life. I've been in broadcasting. Next year will be my 50th year in radio and TV, and I get the call one day from the selection committee, and they say, hey, we're kind of curious, why haven't you applied for the Iowa play-by-play job? Now, I did Iowa 5 years back in the 70s on the Dubuque station, so I knew most of the people at the university. I said, well, look, I'm 45 years old. I said, I'm not going to play that political game. I got a good gig. I'm doing Northwestern, and I said, I'm not going to throw my name in the hat only to have the job go to Z or Brooksy or Gonder. And the selection committee head said, no, Bob Bowlesby thinks you should apply because it's not out there yet, but we're going to keep Podolak and we're going to keep Hansen. Boy, that had to be a tough decision, huh? But we felt we cannot give the play-by-play to one over the other over the third, so we're going to hire a new play-by-play guy. Well, then I was all in, both feet, and they interviewed two of us. And out of 90, I think they said 93 applicants, and I got the job. So, I said then, I'll say it today, it's not my job. I'm sitting in that chair for a couple more years, and then I'm going to hand the baton off to the next voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we'll see where it goes. But, the good Lord is here today sprinkling gold dust of salvation, or at least a part of salvation on all of us, and I'm impressed by the turnout. I'm impressed by your attention. I'm impressed by the speakers, and it's only to. I'm a humble guy. I operate by humility. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I was only too excited to get here today and share some thoughts with you. Another quote: God is a jealous God. You hear that, devil? God is a jealous God. God works for the good of those who love him. So no matter what else you hear today, remember, God loves you. He loves me very, very much, despite our faults. It's 105 days until kickoff. I actually did the math last night because let me have a few weekends off, please, before the next season. But a thought struck me this morning listening to Tim. How many of us won't be here in 105 days? Now, there's something to think about. I think about that every day. I'm blessed that he gives me another day to breathe and come down here and address you guys and 7 females. Oh, they left. Oh, okay. They must have heard me before. But Labor Day weekend will be here before you know it. And then I'll get a text message from Bishop Johnson. I know I'm going to get a text message week 2 after the Hawks open up with Indiana. I think that's a Friday night game, or it might be. And then we go to Ames, and that is going to be some football game. Let me tell you. Hopefully, it's not like 2 or 3 years ago when we were there with the 9 inches of rain and the student body racing out onto the field, and the lightning bolts are crashing down. And you should have seen Podolak's facial expression at that point. I won't repeat it or try and recreate it, but Bishop Johnson. I've known Bishop for a long time. I talked about his tour of Loras College and the parishes he was at in Dubuque, and from socially to religiously, he's just a wonderful man. And going forward, a tremendous spiritual leader he will be for this diocese and its parishes. Archbishop Jacels up in Dubuque, I've gotten to know real well. And I mentioned Bishop Bill is a Cyclone. Archbishop Jacels is a Husker. What the hell kind of penance is that? I don't have to go to confession today. I've got 2 of my best friends, the men of the cloth, are Cyclones and Huskers. And Archbishop Hannes, before Archbishop Jacels, was a Nebraska fan. So I'm going to get on that selection committee somehow, some way for the next. Now, maybe we don't have any Catholics in Iowa City, but I would dispute that. I mean, how can you suspend a guy like me twice, huh? I mean, that's just not. Is this being live streamed, by the way? Let's edit that part out. I don't want to joke about that, seriously. I said I live in Dubuque. I should have said I come from the state of Dubuque because it took us 150 years to get a 4-lane highway in and out of the community because Dubuque never listened to the legislature. And finally, the state governing fathers and mothers said, okay, Dubuque, you go your own way, and we'll get back to you, or you get back to us. Well, ultimately, Dubuque rejoined the state of Iowa, and it's the oldest city in the state. It's a predominantly Catholic, heavily Catholic community, as most of you know if you've been to Dubuque. I met a number of you today who have Dubuque ties, Dubuque roots. By the way, I'll bet at least four people came up to me this morning. You know, you're a lot shorter in person. I go, yeah, and heavier too. What? For the greeting, it's great to be here. But TV makes you look bigger, or heavier, or taller, and I'm pretty much none of those. So I'm 5'9". It's not like I'm 5'4", but I had to get that off my chest. Anyway, not that I'm concerned about how I look, but that said, I've had. And listening to Tim, I thought about my setbacks in my Catholic faith and where it has brought me to this point today. And, we're all sinners, but we all like to think that we're Christian crusaders as well. And I love the beliefs and the teachings of the Catholic Church. And my day starts with daily Mass every day. Now, the last year, I've been doing a lot of online daily masses at the wish of the Archbishop, and we'll all get back to normal here as this thing called COVID disappears. I've attended a couple of men's conferences in Cedar Rapids at Xavier High School, and found it very enriching, very rewarding. Spoke at two of those that I remember, and met a lot of people just like you. Great fellowship. I love doing that. And I mean, I'm a people person. I know I hide behind a microphone most of the time during the season where you can't see me, although you can see everything online now. Nothing is hidden, so I try and dress up and shave now before we go on the air. And I know I'll look better in Podolak either way. But I hope this isn't live streaming. Although Ed or I could not find a live web stream. But anyway, spring football just concluded a few weeks back. And I like to consider myself a true Catholic, a devout Catholic, but, you know, I'm respectful for other religions, other beliefs, and we have to be in today's society. But from Labor Day through, in this case, the end of April, I was gone every weekend, either covering football, basketball, or spring football, until we had the spring broadcast a few weeks ago. So fast forward to the following week, which was, I think, May 7th or 8th. I love early Sunday morning. I love to go to early Mass. Nativity has a 6:30 Mass in Dubuque, and that's a rarity that any parish has a 6:30 Mass anymore. So I usually hit that regularly. Then I love to race back home. I live about 10 miles out of town, nice wooded bluff top subdivision, and I pop the toast in. I like burnt toast, put the coffee on. I love the smell. And so it's 8 o'clock that Sunday morning, and the doorbell rings. And I'm thinking, who in the world is ringing my doorbell at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning? So I'm a little bit upset, and I pull the door open, and it's two Jehovah's Witnesses. And we know the stereotypes, the clean white starch shirts, the black string ties, two young guys, 19, and they're smiling away. Good morning, sir. I got their little Bibles. May we come in and quote scripture for you? Well, in my aging body, I've become a lot more tolerant of everything. So I thought, you know what the heck? Come on in, guys. I said, go right over there and sit down on my couch, and I'll be right with you. So I grabbed my coffee, and I'm looking at the toast, and I'm drooling, and I'll get back to you in a minute. So I walk in, and I sit down. I got a big smile. They're smiling away. I'm going to give them $5 and pat them on the head and send them on their way. I said, okay, guys, I'm Catholic. Where do we start? And the kid goes, how the hell do I know? This is the furthest we've ever gotten. I'm so happy I didn't slam the door in their face, regardless of what their beliefs are, where they come from. But so that, I enjoyed my cold toast shortly thereafter. But that said, I was born and raised in Cascade, where somebody told me, father told me Crashcade, because he was in the seminary with a couple Cascade natives, attended Loras College. I met a lot of Duhawks here today. Great school up in Dubuque. Born and raised in Cascade, as I said for many years, Cascade is a drinking town with a small farming problem, but we're working our way through that. I grew up in Cascade. It was 1,100 people. We had 9 bars. I don't know why I remember that. My dad ran one of them. And for that reason, you know, he would hold bus trips to Comiskey Park every year. Our family, great Yankee fans, so Mickey Mantle was everything to me. And we would bus in every year, and that's where I fell in love with baseball. I was 8 years old. My folks the next year for Christmas, I was 9, they gave me a red-colored spin dial RCA transistor radio. There are some of you old enough in the room to remember those days. But I'd lay in the top bunk every night. My brother, a year younger than I am, underneath me, and with 7 kids in our family. And I found it fascinating that I could just turn that dial a little bit, and I could go from a Detroit Tiger broadcast in the Motor City with the great Hall of Famer Ernie Harwell to Jack Buck in St. Louis, KMOX, all these incredible 50,000 watt clear channel radio stations. We didn't have any, I mean, this is in the 60s. And then I'd go a little further and I'd pick up WCCO in Minneapolis with Merle Harmon and Halsey Hall, the Minnesota Twins. And then I'd come back to Chicago and Brickhouse and Bob Elson and all these incredible Hall of Fame broadcasters. And I said to myself then, I want to be one of them. And I didn't quite make it to that level. I did call minor league baseball for 5 years and fell in love with the game of baseball. I've had a lifelong passion for baseball. But Cascade was your typical small Iowa community, agriculture backbone, and it was a great atmosphere to grow up in. And there were 7 kids in my family. I was the oldest. The youngest was 2. And I can still hear my sister screaming. She was in 6th grade. One morning she went up, it was April, she went upstairs to wake up Dad. And she came down the stairs screaming, he's all blue, he's not moving. So I race upstairs. And it was clear to me, even at 14 years old, that he was dead. He died in his sleep, heart issues. And the youngest was 2, and everybody else was in between. So here was my mother faced with raising 7 hoodlums by herself. And so we were still grieving the next day, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Catholic Charities. And I obviously had never heard of, I'm a freshman in high school, never heard of Catholic Charities. But they had bags of food, they had hand-me-down clothes, better than the clothes we had. We weren't poor by any stretch of the imagination, but if you can imagine, those of you that have been around a small-town grocery and bar growing up in the 60s, you didn't make a lot of money. Your overhead was quite high. And Father Cruzy came from St. Martin's. Here's another thing. Highway 151 went right through the middle of Cascade. Here's a town of a little more than 1,000 people. And I talked to a couple Cascade natives here today. We had 2 Catholic parishes in a town, and that's unheard of. St. Mary's, the Germans were on the south side of 151, and the Irish, St. Martin's, were on the north side of 151. And when they played, we didn't have football, of course, or wrestling, but we had great basketball and baseball. And when they played each other on that day, you never crossed Highway 151 for threat of excommunication. Of course, Northeast Iowa, Dubuque County, Field of Dreams, it's a very passionate baseball community. But anyway, now we're fatherless. And Father Cruzy and folks from the parish, Catholic Charities, other volunteers in the community wrapped their arms around the Dolphin family, and that has left a lifelong, lasting impression on me. That's why I'm always willing to volunteer for most anything, schedule permitting. I sit on a number of boards from a Camp Courageous type facility to United Way to the American Cancer Society. I'm a prostate cancer survivor. You have to give back to your community, whether it be Des Moines or Little Cascade, Iowa. So that we got through that. 20 years, fast forward 20 years later, we're all out working professionally, and I get a call at 2:30 in the morning that my 32-year-old brother had been killed in a car accident. And to this day, I miss him terribly. Timothy Patrick John was his name. And he lived like a wild Irishman, to a fault. And God sent us another message. So we have 3 boys, 3 sisters, or 3 girls, and we're all healthy and all doing well. In fact, we're going to have our mother passed 5 years ago. She had Alzheimer's, dementia for about 8 or 9 years. And the community that turned out for her funeral is just incredible. I think the whole town was there because most remembered the difficult time she had raising us into what has become a pretty good family. Kids that have their kids, and I've got 3 grandkids, and so I'm enjoying life indeed. But our lives were forever changed when Dad passed, and here we are 50 years later. But God gives us all these hurdles, but he never gives you more than you can handle. I really believe that. So if I would leave you with anything today, it's be strong, know there's a reason, know there's a purpose in what he is doing, and we all get through it because of friendships and because of faith. And you know, I'm 14 years old when Dad passed. I had some questions for God. I mean, Lord, 7 kids, a mother. We ultimately had to sell the store because she couldn't run it and raise 7 kids. She worked at the local newspaper then for 35 or 40 years until we forced her to quit working. Mom, we'll take care of you from now on. But she loved working. We all do in small-town Iowa. Every one of us in here today came from small-town Iowa somewhere a generation or two ago. And this is the greatest state in the union, in my opinion, simply because of the backbone and the work ethic that we have in Iowa. We're not going to let something like COVID get us down. But God's always there for you. He never gives you more than you can handle. He's got a plan and a purpose for all of us, individually and collectively. And part of that plan has brought us together here today. It's out there somewhere that there are live by the 7 Ps. Have you heard that? I can't tell you all 7 of them. I used to be able to rattle them off. 7 Ps. If you Google it, you'll see. I've picked 3 of those and try to carry myself with preparation, pride, and perseverance. Now, I just told you I'm humble and I work with humility. Humility is one of my favorite words. You don't have to worry about me and an ego being the voice of the Iowa Hawkeyes. I understand what that job is. I grew up listening to all the great names. I mentioned Z. Hayden Fry had one of the greatest lines at a press conference to open the season. Well, Coach, tell us about your schedule this year. And Hayden thought a minute. He goes, well, son, there's the 11 we play and the 11 Zabel sees. You can't make that up. I mean, and Z would laugh. Z's sitting right there, and Hayden's snickering at him. And Zabel always, when I got the job, I had a meeting with Jim and Ron Gonder and Bob Brooks, and if you remember, we kept those 3 great voices involved, pregame, halftime, postgame. And I knew Zabel would be the one that it would be the stickiest to work with because he's at WHO. Why isn't he the next voice of the Hawkeyes? So I had a meeting with Z the night before the first game, and it was Iowa playing UNI. I said, Jim, I love you like a brother. I've listened to you. I've worked with you. I've traveled with you socially, picked up every one of your tabs, or Podolak did. So, you know, cut me some slack tomorrow. When that game starts, I'm doing the play-by-play. Oh, yeah, no problem, Dolph. Here's a little bit of advice. Just keep talking until you think of something to say. He had had a few scotches at that point, but that is a passing era. I mean, who knows what radio is going to be like in 5, 10 years? I mean, everything is online, live stream, Facebook, Twitter. It's a different world, and I'm ready to step aside when I don't feel I can handle that anymore, or at least keep up. But before I talk a little Hawkeyes, be a Christian, most notably with your God. But when you leave here today, be a Christian for your family, for your neighbors, in your work and in your recreation. And remember, it's how you treat people. I'm big on treating people the way they should be treated, and that is with respect, with dignity, and you've heard that a lot in the last year and a couple months. This is still the greatest country in the world. Well, we're in the greatest state in the world, so we've got it pretty good. And those high hurdles that we've been leaping over for the last year, they're going to get knocked down eventually and in short term. And be a volunteer. I'm guessing most of you in this room, I know there's a lot of young guys in here. If I could leave you with a bit of advice, obviously you want to work and support your family, but work for nothing. Volunteer, because you love that organization, or you love coaching grade schoolers, get involved. Be a volunteer. I mean, it'll teach you so many great things. It'll give you such great satisfaction. And I'd like to think, a pretty staunch volunteer for my entire life, or most of it. And I go back to that day and that knock on the door, Catholic Charities. I send a check to Catholic Charities every year religiously, because I know firsthand the kind of work and support mechanism that they are. Continue to be humble. Take pride in who you are and what you do, but do it with humility. I got a great quote I'm going to share with you when I conclude the program, or at least my program today. All right. It's been a phenomenal year in Iowa City, and I say that not because of wins and losses, but I saw from a distance what these athletes went through every day, particularly football and basketball. Tested twice a day, morning when they went in for meetings, and when they came back later that day for practice or for just simple workouts or lifting sessions. And that's every sport, 23, 24 sports. But I'm going to focus primarily on football and basketball because that's who I dealt with. I'm so sick of Zooms for interviews, but it's a necessity. But I can't wait till I can sit down in front of Kirk Ferentz and do our one-on-ones like I have for 23 years, or with Fran McCaffrey that I've done for whatever coach has been here, 10 or 11 years. Those athletes, I mean, isolation, depression is a real issue on college campuses. It continues to be with our young people because they were so isolated. Some are to this day. Well, I guess school is out now, so they can go home. Most of the COVID protocols have been lifted. So hopefully everybody survives that without a lasting effect. And it's just to think that football stumbles out of the gate, loses their first two. And we're not here to make excuses, but Spencer Petras had never played a game, had no spring football, was throwing a football against a barn door for a couple months, went home to California, was throwing to his dad in the front yard. That was his training regimen, other than going to a gym, an empty gym to lift weights. Now he's had a great spring. He is not the prototypical quarterback for Iowa. Ferentz likes that roll-out, run-pass option, Drew Tate, Brad Banks, but Spencer helped reel off 6 straight wins after he got a couple games under his belt. 3 of his 5 interceptions through 8 games came in the first 2 weeks. He ended up throwing 9 touchdown passes to 5 picks. And I will tell you, he is as tough as nails. And he knows the naysayers are out there. Don't ever think these kids don't read a newspaper or go online. I mean, they hear and see what's being said about them. And there's no greater motivating factor than that. Not that they dwell on the negative side. But he's a Bay Area kid. He's a West Coast California kid. He just lets it run off his back and moves on to the next day. But six wins by the football team in succession to start the year. Basketball reloads after Luka Garza. What's life going to be like without Luka? The most phenomenal work ethic I've ever seen in an athlete. Best athlete? No, not even close. Greatest basketball player at Iowa? I saw John Johnson play. I saw Freddie Brown play. I saw Don Nelson play. I would never call Luka the greatest, but I've never seen a kid with that kind of work ethic develop into what he has become. And I'll give you a great story. One of the assistant coaches at Michigan, we were up in Ann Arbor. This is the night Lucas hung 44 on the Wolverines. They thought they could guard him one-on-one. And this coach, before the game, told me, and he's a longtime head coach. I said, "What do you think of Garza?" Because we were still trying to figure him out. I mean, he wasn't pedestrian his first 2 years. He had terrific numbers, 12 points, 6 rebounds. But his junior and senior years, where he really mushroomed and took off. And this coach said, "I have never seen a kid turn more horrific terrible passes from turnovers into baskets. He sees it all over the place. He looks gangly. He reaches out with that big bear paw and he pats a ball that he has no business catching on the baseline, pats it up in the air, grabs it, and puts it up and in for a score. He said, "You realize, son, how valuable it is to have a player like that?" And this is in his junior year. Might even been in his sophomore year. I can't quite remember. So he goes out and scores 44 that night. And Bobby Hansen knows a little something about good players. And he said, this kid is going to be special just because of how he works. And, you know, you've seen Frank probably gets more publicity than Luka does, his dad. But Frank was a heck of a player at Idaho and has a training regimen. He does yoga. Can you imagine a 6'11" guy, 265 pounds, doing yoga? I mean, that would be a scary sight in and of itself. But he's so grounded. And again, there's that word, humble, humility. He's he's not introverted, but he's a deep thinker within himself. And when he loses, I mean, that Oregon game, and, you know, we all knew what Iowa's deficiencies were. It was defense, even though we were a lot better defensively. The Hawks were a lot better defensively this year, and it showed in their record. But life is going to be sure interesting after Luka Garza. I'm trying to still get used to but at the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament, we were talking to an NBA scout. And, of course, the naysayers are out there. He can't play in the NBA. He's not athletic. He doesn't jump. Doesn't make any difference that he can step out and shoot the three or hit the mid-range Sigma jump shot from 17 feet or rebound, score with either hand. None of that matters. He's not athletic enough. Well, okay. NBA scout told me, Bobby asked him one time in an interview, he said, you think Luka Garza can play in the NBA? Because Bobby thinks he can play. And the scout looked at him and goes, what? Can Luka Garza play in the NBA? They don't play defense in the NBA. He said, you think one of these 6'5" wing players who's making $27 million a year is going to get in Luka Garza's way? That might be career-threatening. He said, Luka Garza will play in the NBA. Now, that's one scout's opinion. Now, I've seen him as high as 21st in the first round by Brooklyn, but that you know, you can't believe any of that. That might be a smokescreen. We'll see. The Iowa women, with one of the most electrifying players in college basketball. You all know who I'm talking about, Caitlin Clark from Dowling. I mean, Lisa Bluter, phenomenal coach. They look to extend their season beyond an Elite Eight this next year. Spencer Lee, three-time national champion, back-to-back Hodge Trophy winner. That's the Heisman of wrestling. So you think about Luka Garza, Caitlin Clark, and Spencer Lee. That those three kids would be on the same campus. And it's just it's been in a phenomenal Twilight Zone type year for Iowa athletics. Final Four for field hockey. Big Ten championships in soccer, track and field. Joey Woody, what a renaissance Iowa track and field is going through. Big Ten golfer of the year, Alex Shockey. He'll be on the Pro Tour. Medalist at the Big Ten championship, sophomore Mac McClure out of Chicago. Now, they lose to Illinois by one shot at the Big Ten championships. And it's easy to stand up here and say our best player went bogey on 17 and 18. That tells you what pressure is, what these kids are under. Illinois beats Iowa by one stroke for the Big Ten team title. Illinois now has won 6 consecutive Big Ten championships. They're one of the top 5, 6 programs in the country, with the Oklahoma States, with the Texas, with Oklahoma, with Florida, and the Hawks just had a phenomenal run. Softball won a school record 26 Big Ten games. They only played a Big Ten schedule this year. They won 26 games, a school record. And they only played a Big Ten schedule because of the COVID protocols again. Less travel, less interaction with leagues that don't have the same testing mechanism that Iowa has. 26 wins for Coach Gillespie. And you all know Rick Heller. I mean, that guy is one of my all-time favorite people. Hawks won again last night. They won 24 baseball games with mostly Iowa kids. Rick Heller did it at Northern Iowa. They got rid of the program, goes to Indiana State, immediately turns that program around. And we finally figured it out. This guy's from southern Iowa. He loves the state of Iowa. Why wouldn't he want to be Iowa's head coach? Well, they brought him in, and all he's done is win every year. I think it's his 7th year. They shut out Northwestern 6-0 last night. They've got outstanding pitching, and the hitting has really come on. And there are other programs that have done. Gymnastics went to nationals, won the Big Ten. Women's gymnastics. Soccer won the Big Ten championship, went to its first ever national tournament. It's a labor of love, needless to say, to be at the University of Iowa. I'm so indebted to all the coaches, to Gary Barta for hanging in there with me. And I should have mentioned this at the top. And you probably have heard me say this at the Polk County I Club. I don't know of another play-by-play guy that has a Super Bowl champion as a football analyst and an NBA champion as a basketball analyst. And they were both great players at the University of Iowa. And I'm asked often, the last ratings survey I saw is that we have, on game day, on a football fall Saturday, we have 200,000 people that tune in and out of our broadcast every 15 minutes. I mean, we're all channel surfers. All right, let's go to the Cyclone game. Let's go to UNI. Let's go to the national game. LSU's playing Alabama. They always come back to the Hawks, of course, and that's how they take rating. 200,000 people. So it's a family reunion every game day Saturday. I don't know what the numbers are in basketball. I mean, 35, 30, whatever it is, basketball games, the numbers are different in the evening. But I know that you're driving down Interstate 80 when the wind chill's 20 below. And as Zabel used to say, you're hugging your radio and getting some warmth off it. So to me, and I've never claimed to be the best play-by-play announcer in radio, but to me, in Iowa, it's a unique situation in that we are an AM, FM radio state. At least we still are. And we love to tune the Hawks in on game day Saturday when you're washing the car in the driveway, when you're the farmer's out in the field, getting ready for harvest. You can't believe the number of farmers we hear from. And these tractors nowadays with these computers, they've got the greatest stereo system in the world. And we're out here in Mallard listening to you and Eddie. And I'm asked often, what is it about an Iowa football or Iowa basketball broadcast? Well, to me, it's all about chemistry. And I'm from eastern Iowa. Bobby's from central Iowa. And Podolak's from southwest Iowa. We got the whole state covered. We've got family and friends tuning in from all over. And, of course, now with XM Satellite, we hear from iClub chapters all over the country. We hear from the military in the Middle East. We're at 2 in the morning. It's noon in Iowa City, and they've got the volume turned way down so the enemy doesn't pick up that radio wave. They probably, what is that? Football. So it's incredible. Grandpa Stopulus was mentioned a little while ago. That was one of the most engaging, self-satisfying interviews I've ever done. You think about 18, 19 years old, sitting in the co-pilot seat of a B-17, flying in over Normandy Beach or Omaha Beach. And I remember what Jim told me. I looked down, I saw, I think he said there were 30,000 either troop carriers or the boats that are driving onto the beach, and the lid falls down and they're immediately engaged by machine gun fire. And I said, what do you remember most about, what's most vivid in your mind? He said, I could hear the shrapnel hitting the undercarriage of the B-17 right where I was sitting. And thankfully they built those things. But he said, when we land, you could see holes the size of Coke bottles all over the plane. And, they had the belly gunners and the tail gunner. I mean, you think about 18, 19 years old and being asked to go kill Germans. I just joined the board of the Hoover Presidential Library. They're going to go through a multi-million-dollar refacing of the Hoover Presidential Museum and Library. Bishop Johnson, thank you for mentioning Chaplain Al Schmidt this morning. This is the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, coming up in December. I sit on the Veterans Memorial Commission up in Dubuque. We have this world-class Veterans Memorial right down on the Mississippi River. As you can imagine, that setting, if you think about it, May 30th, we're rededicating the memorial. We put $3.2 million into repurposing the Veterans Memorial in Dubuque. It's a tri-state, three-state area, and we're redoing it because we finally convinced the Vietnam veterans to come join their brothers and sisters from the other conflicts. And if you've read at all about the Vietnam War, and I lived through the Vietnam War, as many of you have, we all know how those folks were treated, how those soldiers were treated when they came home. Not unlike the political atmosphere today, but they finally agreed, and it's like digging up a grave. I had a Vietnam vet tell me this. We would hope that you would move that Veterans Memorial. They had another Vietnam Vets Memorial, another part of town, with solemnity, with courtesy, with respect. I said, trust me, that will happen. It's like you're exhuming a body. And so we've moved that Vietnam Veterans Memorial. We've got a Huey helicopter above the memorial, sits on a pond, and we had probably $1 million of that $3.2 million went into reconstructing the smokestack of the USS Oklahoma. So we have a curving boardwalk out to the middle of this rather large pond, and the smokestack of the Oklahoma. It's called rainfall. You know how soothing a rainfall is in the spring or the summer? At night, windows open, and it's for all veterans to watch. And there are several poems and inscriptions in there. So if you go on the City of Dubuque's website, you can take a look at it. But I appreciate Bishop Johnson bringing that up. When I walk into the booth on game day, this is my 2 deep. Well, in this case, it's a 3 deep because it's from the spring game. So I had every name on here. Well, not 125 names, but there's offense and there's defense. And I show this to you, and you're welcome to come up and take a look at it afterwards, but these are the prospective starters with their backups for this coming season. But my point in showing you this is that every inch, piece, millimeter of information I would ever want is on these sheets. And I might use 10, 12, 15% of it during the game. And it's kind of like life, because once the game kicks off, the game goes in another direction. You can look at scouting reports. I was asked today by somebody, how much prep time do you put into a football game? It averages out to about 10 hours a week. When I get home on Saturday night after a game, road or home, I just kind of collapse and have a beer and flip around and see what else went on today. Sunday, I make connections with the next week's opponent. They're sports information people. I'd like to interview Coach Harbaugh. Good luck, he says. Or Urban Meyer, whoever it happens to be. PJ Fleck, row the boat. So I spend a good portion of Sunday afternoon lining up contacts. You know, the Cyclones and the Big Ten teams, I pretty well know them year to year, you know, who their stars are coming back. It's the Colorado State, it's the Kent State, they're on the schedule this year. I put in a couple extra hours trying to figure out, you know, who their studs are and what they like to do. And then Monday gets here, and I talk to my producer for about an hour. He updates the stats for me. Tuesday, the 2 deeps come out, both teams. Those that will give you the 2 deeps. Now it's a big secret, apparently, to some schools. Well, Illinois, they won't have their 2 deeps till Saturday morning. Oh, okay. Why? That's just, some coaches are protective of their guys. And it all has everything to do with injuries. Ferentz can be a little bit salty that way. Hayden was brutal that way. He never wanted to release injuries. At least I can coax it out of Kirk. I mean, if Chad Greenway isn't playing Saturday, we're going to know about it real quick. But my point in all this, it's kind of like life. You know, you get up every morning and you're planning on, you got your bucket list of 4 or 5 things to do, and you get turned in a different direction. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes tragic. A good friend of mine just had his son killed in a motorcycle accident a couple weeks ago. He was on life support for 2 weeks, 22 years old. And when he went for that, and he's a good kid. His dad is part owner of a local public golf course, 5 kids, devout Catholics, belonged to St. John the Baptist in Piasta. And when he took that motorcycle, a hardworking man, fiance, a baby, and when he took that motorcycle ride up around Holy Cross, up in north of Dubuque, beautiful, along the river, he had no idea he was going to lose control of that motorcycle. I don't know if he was wearing a helmet or not, but just unbelievable how life can throw a curveball to you. But we survive, we press on, we move on. I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of great people, athletes, coaches, politicians. Tom Brokaw is one of my favorite interviews. He wrote The Greatest Generation. You can tell I'd have been a history teacher had I not been a radio broadcaster. I love history, and particularly military history, and in particular Civil War history. How ironic that the events of this past year would tie all the way back to the Civil War. I've been to every major battle theater of the Civil War, and you can learn a lot by visiting places like that. Serene, quiet, but profoundly disruptive when those battles were going on 160 years ago. And what President Lincoln went through, you look at his photographs from the time he took office to the week he was assassinated, you wouldn't think it's the same man. So there's pressure on everybody, from the president to you and I, every day. But somehow we persist, we persevere. Preparation, prepare for every day. Take pride in what you do, because you work hard at it, but be humble. And then persevere, because there are days you're going to get your butt kicked. And I've been on the end of many lopsided games. So what do? That stack of material, I walk into the booth, I start thumbing through there looking for good jokes or some way to break the ice, because Podolak, he just, I mean, I've had to talk him off the ledge at Kinnick on more than one occasion. And when I write my book, I'm going to include a chapter on Ed and on Bobby. But how many guys do you know have their name on the ring of a stadium? Ed Podolak has his at Arrowhead. Yeah, he's in the Chiefs Hall of Fame. How many guys are gloated upon by Karl Malone, who in his Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame speech a week or so ago, lauded Bobby Hansen for what a great teammate he was with the Utah Jazz. I mean, or Michael Jordan, when he won, I think, the second championship in that string of 3 in the early 90s, kissed that gold basketball and said, "This one's for Bobby Hansen," because he was with those great Utah teams, should have won a couple world titles, but they ran into a guy named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and James Worthy and Derek Fisher and the Lakers every year. Couldn't get out of the West. And I think to say he's one of us, he's from Des Moines, he's from Dowling, that really is a feather in your cap. With that, I want to conclude. Probably, I was talking about interviewing. Probably the highlight of my life was I got to interview Mickey Mantle one time. It was only a 27-minute interview. He kept looking at me. "We about done?" He needed a refill. Bobby Knight wasn't feeling well. He had the flu terribly. We played Texas Tech at the United Center in Chicago. And I told their SID, look, I know he doesn't like to interview opposing radio, but just 3 questions. So I get to the fourth question. Bobby, this is later in his career, he's short answers. I asked the fourth question. I thought, okay, I'll pry one more out of him. He looks at me and he goes, I thought you were only going to ask 3 questions. Okay, he doesn't forget. I said, Coach, we're done. Thank you very much for your time. But the most engaging interview, I got to tell you, is Coach John Wooden, the Wizard of Westwood. And for those of you college basketball history buffs, what Coach Wooden did will never be duplicated. He won 10 NCAA championships in 12 years. 9 in a row, as memory serves me correct. So Iowa is playing in the inaugural Wooden Classic in Indianapolis in 2003 or 4, somewhere in there. And all four teams, Thad Matta was coaching Butler. I think it was Purdue and us in Louisville. We knocked off Louisville in that first game. Anyway, I'm coming back from the team shoot-around the morning of the game. We played that night. And I walked through the lobby, and there is John Wooden, at the time 92 years old, sitting in a big high-back leather chair, perfectly dressed, suit and tie. And he's got his cane, and he's waiting for somebody to pick. They're going to have a luncheon in his honor. So, gullible as I am, I walk up. Coach, Gary Dolphin, I do the radio for Iowa. Oh, yes, young man, how are you? I said, would you mind if I turn my recorder on here and just talk to you while you're sitting in that chair for 2 or 3 minutes? No problem. And what a great interview. And he talked about have passion for everything you do it the right way. And as he's talking, and very eloquent, articulate guy, I'm thinking, I'm talking to the guy that recruited Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'm talking to the guy that recruited Bill Walton. I'm talking to the guy that recruited Walt Hazzard and Gail Goodrich and Sidney Wicks and Curtis Rowe. And, that was won 87 straight games before Notre Dame and John Shoemate ended that incredible run in South Bend. And I'm just kind of, I'm sorry, Coach, one more question. But I've read a couple of his books about life, and just a couple of John Wooden quotes. Make each day your masterpiece. Things turn out best for the people who make the best of the way things turn out. That one has stuck with me. Do not let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And my favorite John Wooden quote, talent is God-given. Be humble. Talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful. I mean, I would guess at one point in our lives, we've been humble, we've been grateful, and we've been a little conceited, perhaps in your religious venture. I know I have. I mean, there were days a few years ago when I thought I would, I'm really talented because I'm the voice of the Hawkeyes. And, as we get older, we figure it out. Tim's message was so incredible that we can all take from what he said today and be better for it tomorrow. Okay, 5 minutes for questions. I overstayed my welcome. I apologize to you Cyclone fans and Notre Dame fans. And has the baseball tournament started yet? No. We're wrapping up the season at Northwestern this weekend. Won 6-0 last night. They'll play today and tomorrow. And then they did not have a Big Ten softball tournament. I'm not sure. I'd have to check and see if they're going to have a Big Ten baseball tournament. Because of the costs, because of the COVID, understand Iowa's operating with a $50 million deficit after this past year. Iowa State has to be pretty close to that. So not only have they cut programs, but they're cutting some corners too. But at least we're playing. So if there's a Big Ten tournament, it'll be next weekend. And I know Iowa had to get an at-large bid in softball. They did not. And I'm guessing baseball will go the same direction. Anything else? Yes, sir. Back of the room there. No. Now, Alex Padilla, who is that run, throw, roll out, he's not Drew Tate, and he's certainly not Brad Banks, but he's gifted. The problem with Alex is his accuracy, and that is due in large part to he just hasn't played. Right now, Petrus, trust me, is the starting quarterback. As we saw in the spring game, what's the kid's name? The third string, Deuce, number 2, Deuce Hogan. He's got some skill. So, I mean, I think it'll be a race going forward. I mean, Ferentz loves competition, and he'll tell you that it's a quarterback race. But you're asking me, it's right now it's Petrus, solid number 1. Yes? When I was growing up as a kid, who was my Catholic role model? Probably my uncle. His brother was a police chief in Cascade, and I respected him, trust me. You know, as 14, 15, I mean, I was playing baseball. I had to give up baseball. I was a pretty good baseball player. Loved basketball. Still got to play basketball, but I have a brother a year younger. I have a sister 2 years younger. We all went out and got 2 jobs to help support Mom. And I'm not here, you know, with a crying towel. I learned a lot as a freshman in high school about what being a man is or growing up sooner than you want to. But Uncle Dave, Dolphin, who had just been out of the Air Force not too terribly, the Army, not too terribly long before Dad passed. There's some hard issues in the Dolphin family, as we later learned, but I'd have to say Uncle Dave, and then Bishop Johnson will appreciate this. Our pastor at St. Martin's was Father Daniel O'Sullivan. I mean, he was right out of County Cork. You could not understand a word he was saying when he came to the house to visit, or during a sermon on Sunday, because of that Irish block. And so those 2 people were very instrumental in my life, and I loved Pope Paul VI, who was very predominant in the Catholic Church then. I have so much respect for our popes. I mean, they just have such a difficult job with this world stage that they're sitting on. And they are the supreme mediator of what's going on in the Middle East right now. I'm surprised that he hasn't at least issued a statement. Maybe he hasn't, I just missed it. But Uncle Dave, I'd say, was very good to us growing up. 1 or 2 more. Hayden was Baptist. Is that religious, Bishop? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Whenever I ask Coach, I did Hayden's last 3 years, 2 or 3 years, and I'd see him. The most amazing thing about Hayden Fry is he was here today and met each and every one of you. He would not, trust me, and I'm not exaggerating, he would never forget your first name. You could run into him 5 years from now. Hey, Billy, how are you, Billy? But every time I'd see Coach, you know, he had a heck of a battle with colon, prostate cancer that they felt he had been saddled with for 40 years. He hadn't had a physical in 41 years when he left Iowa. Shirley said, first thing you're going to do is go get checked out. They found the cancer. Would have killed him a few years. I mean, he lived to be 90, whatever it was, 91, 92. But I'd say, Coach, how you feeling today? Well, Gary, let me tell you, I'd rather be toes up than toes down. I guess that meant he was feeling okay. I'm not sure, but I mean, you think about it, 2 football coaches in 43 years. There were 2 ADs in 40 years, in 35 years, Bump Elliott and Bob Bowlesby. Now, Gary Bart has been there, I think, 12 or 13 years. The stability at Iowa is a huge reason why Iowa's been successful in many sports, not just football and basketball. And I know we want to go to the playoffs and we want to win a Big Ten championship, but I know Iowa fans are pretty fair, that if you win 8 games every year, or average 7 or 8 wins, and you get to 10 on occasion and go to a BCS Bowl, I think Iowa fans are pretty satisfied. I mean, Kirk's been to 19 bowls in his 22 years? And yeah, there are too many bowl games, but it's a reward for the players. It's a nice trip for you all, usually someplace warm, not Yankee Stadium. And as Kirk would tell you, we ain't ever going to Detroit. Now, he might have to, but now Kirk is, I'm so blessed to be able to work with those guys. But one more. Somebody's got to have a probing question. Yes, sir. Full stadiums are what? Will there be full stadiums this year? Well, we've got 106 days. I think that call will be right up until, a month before the season, 3 weeks before the kickoff. They're hopeful for a full house. But that's a Big Ten decision right now. Now, Iowa has said that they'll have 25% capacity in there. I think the Big 12 is wide open, right? Is it full house for Big 12? Iowa State? I know they had some fans last year. So that's to be determined, honestly. Well, let me wrap up by saying I appreciate you sitting here patiently for the last 45 minutes to an hour, and I wish you all success in both your religious life and your work life and your family life going forward. And hopefully you've got a little better insight into what we do each week. I'm so blessed to be able to have Podolak and Hansen there with me. That's where the chemistry comes. One quick Ed Podolak story. I get asked a lot, what's Pody like? Well, he is off mic. He's better than he is on mic. Well, that guy give a woodpecker a headache, buddy boy. I won't tell you who he was saying that about, but it's... Anyway, we're playing Ball State, and Jake Rudock is our quarterback. And we're a 4-touchdown favorite. Opening day, whatever year it was, 2012, 2013. Ball State comes in a 28-point underdog, and they've got the Hawkeyes down. I think it was 17-13, as memory serves me correct, with 5 minutes to go in the game. And we have 2 timeouts left. And we are stinking the joint up. And it's a 78-degree Saturday afternoon, second week in September. Not a cloud in the sky. Beautiful day. Packed house at Kinnick. And we get the ball. We force a short punt. We got the ball at, now we need a touchdown. We got the ball at midfield. We go 3 and out. And we punt. And Podolak stands up, and he's taking the hit, and I know he's going to slam it. This is Hawkeye football from Learfield. We get to the break as he lets the headset go. He's damaged more headsets in 20. This will be our 25th year coming up. And so I've learned, don't even talk to Ed when he's that upset. He'll sit down, and we got a 2-minute break. He sits back down. The right earphone is dangling because he gets a piece of Scotch tape and he puts it on, and you hear this. So probably 5,000 people get up and they leave. I figure that's it. And as they're streaming out, we're coming back from the commercial break, and I'm just trying to cut through the tension. Well, buddy boy, there's something you don't see every game day here at Kinnick Stadium. 7,000 or 8,000 fans are now exiting Kinnick Stadium to head back to the parking lot and start their tailgating a little early. And right on cue, and I have no idea what he's going to say. Well, buddy boy, let's be honest. If we weren't getting paid, we'd have been gone a long time ago. On the air. We'd have been gone a long time ago. He'd have been down, meaning, translation, he'd have been down at the Wig and Pen at halftime. That's why he's Ed Podolak. So thank you all. God bless you all.